Okay, so we're back with Sunday morning Torah and coffee. I hope you had a wonderful weekend, a wonderful Shabbat, and let's start learning Torah, because that's what we should do. Let's learn some Torah. Oopsie, let me make sure that this is holding and that we're good over here. Hope you could see me. And as we always start with a bracha, let's start with a bracha, Let's go with a bracha on the coffee. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam shehakoil nihiyah bidvaroi. Okay. So today we're going to learn Torah, as we do every Sunday. But this week I think we're going to actually focus on the portion of the week. The portion of the week that we begin this week is Parshat Chayei Sorah. Chayei Sorah is in Genesis. It is the, it is the Reishis, Noach, Lech Lecha, Vayer. It is Reishis, Noach, Vayer. It is the fifth portion in Parshas, in the book of Genesis. The name of the portion is Chayei Sorah. Chayei Sorah means the life of Sorah. Sarah, as the mother of all the Jews, Abraham's wife, Sarah, the matriarch of all Jews, and the Torah this week tells us that the life of Sarah was 100 years, 20 years, and 7 years. So let's learn here. Let's learn. Let's think, and let's try to be lift it up a little bit over here. You know, I'm not sure in what year they came out with something that was called the death insurance. The death insurance. They came out with the death insurance, and nobody bought into it, because who wants to deal with death insurance? And then someone came along and very brilliantly changed it to life insurance. And as we know, the rest is history. And from there it took off. So nothing changed in what they were selling, but just the change of name. And all of a sudden, the whole product got a different view, a different attitude of how people viewed it, and so on, and fantastic. So this week's Torah portion is called Chayei Sorah, the life of Sarah. However, it deals with, everything in this portion deals with the passing of Sarah, the death of Sarah. So why is it called Chayei Sorah, the life of Sarah? You know, the class is, are you old? Are you happy? Are you grumpy? That's the title of the class. So, you know, all is in the name and in marketing. So, you know, the question over here is asked, why is it called the life of Sarah? And of course, commentaries answer and tell us that part of the reason why it's called the life of Sarah is because the righteous, it's based on a statement of our sages of Chazal, that the righteous, even when they are deceased, are alive, and the wicked, even while they are alive, they are dead. So let's elaborate, let's discuss that by first bringing another verse in this week's Torah portion. This week's Torah portion, and you know, we're coming now from a political campaign where you see that a big part is how you frame the issue. Framing the issue is very important, but even more important is obviously the substance. Even though we live, I remember reading, I think this was in the Reader's Digest years ago, that they put out two products. They put out two products in a supermarket, the exact same product. And one was in this very appealing package, and one was in a very plain package. No nice pictures, graphics, and so on. And then they did a test, and they asked people which product they liked better. And it was exactly the same product. And the people responded positively to that which was packaged in the nicer package, again, even though it was the exact same product. So a lot is in the packaging, but Torah likes to, of course, go much deeper than the packaging, to take off the layers, the outer layers of what obscures the reality of things. So let's there's another verse talking about that the name of this week's portion is the life of Sarah. There's another verse in this week's Torah portion as by way of introduction, when it talks about the fact that Abraham decides that I would like to go ahead and I have to find a wife for my son Isaac. This is the first time in the Torah that we find about the shidduch. We find about matchmaking, going out and finding a wife for your child, finding a spouse for your child. And that's perhaps a class unto its own right. There's a lot we can discuss about that. But the Torah begins and says the following introduction. The Torah says, Va'avram zokein bo bayomim, Vashem berech es Avram bakoil. Avram was zokein, was old or elderly, coming in his days, and Hashem has blessed Avram with everything, bakoil. Now, this expression, Avram was old, bo bayomim, coming in his days, seemingly is a double expression. Avram zokein, Avram was old, bo bayomim, coming of days, as we use that expression. But here, the Zohar says something very beautiful, and with this explanation, we will also try to explain the first question. The Zohar says the following, because again, the question was, are you old, grumpy, happy? Avram zokein bo bayomim. So here I want to explain a little bit of a mystical concept, so bear with me, a Kabbalistic concept. The Zohar and Kabbalah, Jewish mysticism, explains that you're after 120, God willing, everybody listening to this class should be healthy and well and live many years, as we use the expression based on the end of Genesis, until 120. And then your soul and body part ways, and your soul is on its journey to a more spiritual plane, and it comes before the heavenly court, and there are decisions to be made. Says the Zohar the following, that what is it that sustains and gives life to your soul? It is the levushim, it is the garments that it brings with it as it ascends to the more spiritual realms after you pass away after 120. What are those garments? What are those garments that through which you are not naked? You come into the world to come, and you come well prepared, and it is through that your soul receives nourishment and pleasure. What is it? It is the deeds and actions that you have done throughout your life. It is the mitzvahs, the good deeds that you have done. Those become the garments of the soul. In this material physical world, perhaps your nice shirt or your pants or whatever it might be a garment. But for your soul not to be naked, and for your soul to receive the energy and reward in the world to come, it is all through the mitzvahs that you have amassed throughout your life and throughout your days. Okay, that's point number one. Point number two is, let's talk about time for a moment. Okay? Does time stand still, or does time go by quickly? They're both true. In the sense, of course, time by definition means that it's moving. Time goes by. But, if you're doing something like really boring, it seems like time stands still. I mean, class is not over for another 2 hours. Oh, my goodness, how am I going to make it? Right? If you're watching something tremendously captivating, this thriller or so on, 2 hours could go by so quickly. And so too it is with a lifetime. With a lifetime, we all know people that might be 90 years old, 85 years old, and their life was very short. Their life was very short in the sense that if you look at what they have achieved and the impact they have had, their life is not 90 years. The life is maybe 10 years. Perhaps it could have been lived in 10 years or 20 years. And then you look at people who are maybe 20 years old or 30 years old or 40 years old, and you say they have achieved and accomplished and done so much. They have mastered the time so amazingly and used it and utilized it. So this is what the Zohar says. The Zohar says, "Va'Avraham zoken ba bayamim." Avram was old, and he came in his days. In Hebrew, you could also interpret this to mean Va'Avraham zoken. Avram was old, ba bayamim. He came with his days. What does that mean? He came with his days. Every single day of Avram's life, of Abraham, our father's life, he came with his days. There wasn't a day that was gone. In other words, to give another example, if you're going to eat, I was watching. I like to watch, nature and wildlife. To relax, to release some stress. I like to watch, nature, some like Planet Earth or other PBS and so on. And so I'm in the middle of watching a show of a team that is going to remote places in China, and they're going to these remote places to film wildlife, that has, rare wildlife that has never been filmed before, and how they have to acclimate as they're going up to high elevation. They can't just go and into these really remote and high elevation spots. They have to travel a certain amount of miles, they have to ascend a certain amount of height, and then they have to actually camp for like 24 hours so that their body starts to acclimate to that altitude. Because I learned of a new word, that there's something that's called altitude fatality. And in this clip, I forgot what it's called, the name of this show, of this series. In this clip, they have to bring along, food, and they have a chef, and the chef, they have to eat high calorie food, because if you don't eat high calorie food, I don't know if you're not going to survive. You have to eat high calorie food for everything, for your body to function properly. Otherwise, fatigue sets in very quickly, etc. So just like we talk in time, we could talk in food. You could eat a lot of food and you could even enjoy it, but it's empty calories. So have you eaten? You haven't really eaten. It's empty. It's garnished. Or you could eat less. Let's say sometimes soldiers on the front, or as I just mentioned, these wildlife photographers and explorers and so on, that they eat maybe less, but it's very dense in calories and protein, etc. So this is something that also happens in time and life. So the Zohar says very beautifully like this: Avraham zokein ba bayamim. Avram was old or elderly, but he came in his days. He came with his days. At the end of his life, or towards the end of his life, Avram Avinu could look at his life and say, I have every single day. The words of the Zohar is Kol yoyma v'yoyma ovid avidate. Every single day, Avram Avinu could say, it was not wasted. It was utilized. It was full. My time was full with productivity, with mitzvahs, with good deeds, and so on. So that's why so that's number one. There's another explanation that my dear Rebbe said, which is related to, and it is also similar in theme to the discussion, and it's also very important, especially so beautifully said when we're talking about Avram Avinu's older age. But it's a message to every person that regardless at what age he or she might be at. The Rebbe uses the expression like this: Avram, this explanation. Avraham zokein bo bayomim. Abraham was old, coming into his days. He says the following. He says, you have people that throughout life, and especially once they become older, that the day is something to sort of survive the day. Especially people with depression. You don't have much meaning or things that fill your life, and you're basically just pushing through the day. Especially when people sometimes become older and they retire and they don't find something meaningful and productive to do. So their days are just, in the morning it's okay, what are we having for lunch? And lunch was the evening, let's go to the mall, let's hang around. There's no proper structure, and the day is, I remember on the lighter side of hearing about two elderly people that every single day would go to the doctor. Every day was that was their routine, This was a little cranky, and this was every day. Yankel and Moshe, every single day would meet at the doctor, and this was their routine. Every day, at 11 o'clock in the morning, they would meet the doctor, and they would schmooze, and they would kibitz, and so on. This was their thing. They would go in, the doctor would examine them, go home, and this is how they kept their day full. One day, Moshe doesn't show up at the usual doctor's appointment. Yankel is nervous. Yankel says so he decides to call Moshe. He says, Yankel calls Moshe, says, Moshe, I missed you for our daily routine, daily appointment today. And Moshe responds to him, he says, today, I couldn't make it because today I wasn't feeling well. You understand? So the Rebbe here says very beautifully, it's like this: Avram zokim bo bayomim. Avraham lived life to its fullest every single day. Every single day, bo bayomim krosim, mean he entered into the day. He wasn't just there superficially. He entered into every day. Every single day was a full experience that he lived, loved, cherished, valued, appreciated. In every sense, in a sense of being alive, in a sense of being productive, in a sense of having it be meaningful. So that's what the Torah is also telling us very beautifully. Avraham Zokein bo bayomim. He fully entered into the day. He fully entered completely into the experience of each day that he lived. So, and that's being alive. So the question is, are you happy? You're old, happy, grumpy? If you enter into each day fully, completely, as I just mentioned, then you will be happy. And if you include in that what the Zohar says, that your life is a day that is not wasted, in the sense that you have the mitzvahs, the garments that you need to take for after 120, and the garments that you need to develop for now, for your purpose of your soul and so on, then you will be happy. So Avram Zokim Ba Bayomim, and with this explanation, we understand why this week's Torah portion is called Chaye Sarah, the life of Sarah, even though it deals with after Sarah's passing. Because when your life is a life of just superficial materialism, and that's who you are, then your life is finished by the time you pass away. Someone passes away. Meaning, that's the deeper meaning what our sages tell us, that the righteous, even after their death, are alive, and the wicked, even while they're alive, they're dead. Because materialism is essentially not alive. It's temporary. It's not eternal. Meaningfulness, holiness, godliness, mitzvahs, good deeds, kindness to another, davening, praying, these things are eternal. These things are truly eternally alive. So a person who spends his life just in self-indulgence, his days are very superficial, and they are in a sense dead. They're connected to something that's very temporary, something that doesn't have real life. So the Torah, when do you see what is the real life of a person, is the legacy they leave and the inspiration and that they impart to the next generation. In this week's Torah portion, after Sarah passes away, is where we read about her legacy. We read about Jacob and how Jacob really, Isaac, Yitzchak. We read about Yitzchak, who was the life and everything Sarah dedicated her life for. And Yitzchak follows in her ways. And Yitzchak goes ahead and gets married to a wonderful woman called Rivka. That is the life of Sarah. That is what Sarah was all about. That was her soul. That was her neshama. That was her Yiddish hearts. And the fact that in this week's Torah portion, God establishes that it is Sarah's descendant rather than Yishmael, Sarah, meaning Isaac, will inherit the land, the Holy Land, will follow in her ways, and so on. This is all that Sarah was all about. When your child follows in your footsteps, meaning in what you truly, genuinely, and soulfully believe, that's who you are, that's real life. And that's why the name of the portion is Chaya Sarah. So what do we learn from this? We learn from this that every single day you have to be Bo Bayomim. And it starts with the first thing in the morning. When we wake up in the morning, we right away set the tone and we say, Moda ani lefanecha. We offer thanks to you, Hashem, that you have returned my soul. And therefore I'm going to make this day a soulful day. A day where my soul fulfills its purpose, fulfills its mission, because you've given me another day. And by doing so, by making sure that every single day we accumulate more mitzvahs, we go ahead and fulfill our purpose, we fulfill our meaning in life. That's how we truly, fully entered the day. And that's how we could enjoy all that life has to offer. Both the, of course, the spiritual and the holy elements of life, and just the day-to-day family elements of life, because then you're going to be living a well-balanced, well-meaning life. And that's how you enter into your days. May we merit to follow our father Abraham, to actually be able to enter despite the challenges. You know, Avram Avinu, our father, had difficulties in life. His wife died. He had problems with Yishmael. He had other problems. There was many problems that he had. And throughout all these challenges, the Torah says, Bo Bayomim, he entered into life. Some people, especially after they've had challenges in their life, become dead inside, so to speak, and they stop living life. They stop living life. I want to conclude with a very powerful expression, or a powerful directive from my very own father-in-law. This is a little bit personal, but I think it's very meaningful, and I think it's an attitude. Talk about Bo Bayomim. Talk about taking even someone who's lived a life of. We all have. Every person has gone through challenges in their life. Nobody, in Yiddish, is an expression, "Alts by einem and nishda b'keinem." All by one does not exist. Everybody has their challenges and their difficulties and their struggles. It's how do you respond to them. So here the Torah is telling us the following, and I want to mention this last story. My father-in-law, I might have mentioned this in the past. My father-in-law passed away by today's standards, at a relatively young age. My mother-in-law, who was a wonderful woman, was of course devastated, married for many years, and she was devastated. And my father-in-law left her a message, various things, but one thing that he said, which I think can be shared and should be shared. My father-in-law left her a message, and one of the things he wrote to her, he passed away from cancer, and one of the things he wrote to her is like this: you could either be a widow the rest of your life, or you could be a grandmother for the rest of your life. Let that sink in, because those are very important and wise words. Bo Bayomim, no matter what the challenges and difficulties and upsets you've had in life and so on, Bo Bayom, and make sure to come fully and live fully your days. And one of the most, not the most trusted way to do so is by making sure to learn Torah every single day, because the Torah is the blueprint of how God created this world, and by doing so, you establish a value system and a guide to life that you could enjoy life and make life meaningful in every single way that is special for you, sort of tailored to you. So everybody have a fantastic week. Thank you for joining us today. Please share these words of Torah. You should have a fantastic week, and until next week, and of course stay safe during this tropical storm. Hopefully it doesn't strengthen, but may Hashem protect you, and everybody should stay safe and follow the instructions of those who officials that tell us what should and shouldn't be done during this time. Anyway, everybody sei gesund, and thank you for listening.